What's going on, world? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, here for episode number 11 of No New Leaders. Of course, I'm joined by my brother from another mother, Dr. Jason Nichols. What's going on, Jay?
Nothing much. Ain't nothing going on but the rant. And I think we're on episode 12, I believe.
What did I say?
You said 11, so I think it's 12.
How does dyslexia make it so that I'm not even just inverting numbers? I'm just saying the wrong numbers. So you are correct. This is episode number 12. And we are joined by my good friend, Tim Weedon. Before we get to Tim, we've been trying for weeks to talk about kind of what's going on in popular culture, really still as it relates to leadership. And it's been interesting to see the ways in which kind of leadership has presented itself in the hip hop space. Like everybody and their mother's talking about Mr. Kanye West, but I'm also really interested in the way that folks like Charlemagne the God, folks like various people are just kind of responding. There's a sister I follow whose name escapes me at this exact moment, who does like this show, I think it's called Parking Lot Pimpin', where she drinks a little tea and then spills the tea, and it's really dope. And so there's lots of stuff happening around accountability, around hypocrisy, and really still about leadership. Like, what does it mean to be a leader? And then kind of what does followership look like if people continue to feed the fire that is Kanye West? And so I hit you up earlier this week and you didn't respond. I was like, I don't know if you saw, but your boy Tucker got somebody new to come on to replace you because he interviewed Kanye West this week, which for me, every time I'm always trying to give him a chance to be like, maybe there's really something there. And it's like, every time I watch, I'm just like, you are insane. Like, I don't understand why so many people are invested in the things that he says. But I wonder what, like, thinking about it as a leader within the community, and because he doesn't just have consumers, he really does have fans and stands and people that live their lives according to the things that he's talking about. And I think in that sense, he's definitely a leader within the community. So what does it mean if your leader is as Kanye is, however as you assess it? Because maybe you have a different assessment.
Yeah, I think he's a leader, but I think he's a leader in the way that you kind of theorize it, in the sense that he's a person who says, or at least I interpret it, which interpreting Kanye West can be very difficult. But I interpret it as him saying, I'm not a leader. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a responsibility necessarily to anybody. I have my own thoughts. I have my own ideas. I'm responsible for my own brain, and I'm not going to let other people tell me what to think, and I'm not going to tell other people what to think. Now, again, I think he's a troubled person. I never like to use the words insane for troubled people, because I think there are people who are mentally ill. And I never, want to say that. I think insane implies something, crazy implies something that I don't think we mean to imply when we use those words. But I do think Kanye West at the same time is responsible for what he says, even though he is mentally ill. He's not so mentally ill that he's not responsible for what he says and what he does and the antics. And again, I think it's time for us, like you just stated, I agree with you 100%. It's time for us to move on from Kanye. It's time for us to stop paying attention, to stop looking, to stop saying, well, maybe Kanye. I was one of those people that held out for a long time. Like, maybe the quote unquote old Kanye is going to come back. And like I said, I believe the old Kanye never existed. I think he was, a figment of my own imagination and the imagination of a lot of his fans. So that Kanye's never coming back. He maybe never existed. And we need to move on and pay attention to people that we respect.
Well, what's interesting, because so thank you for correcting me. I shouldn't say insane. I didn't mean it in a clinical sense. I meant it in a hyperbolic sense. Right. I really meant to say that I just feel like he's not stable, and the way that he communicates is difficult to understand. But what I find interesting when I engage with people about it is that they think that is part of what makes him brilliant, is the fact that he doesn't communicate like other people. And it's in a way, like, he really is in a way a kind of Black Trump, in the sense that He goes out, he says outlandish things. People respond to those outlandish things, and those outlandish things make people like him more. And so for me, this is also kind of like why we're doing a show called No New Leaders, is because following people like this doesn't really seem to lead to betterment for people. But maybe part of the challenge is I'm not talking to the right people. Maybe there's some people who are really motivated by his corporate partnerships and seeing, how he's become a one-time billionaire. Even though he claims 10 billion, Forbes says 1.8. Like, just like Trump, he says something about his money that can't be validated by third parties. And I think that's important only because part of the justification for people seeing him as a leader or following him is that financial success. And so if that financial success is inflated, like, I mean, he's still a billionaire, but like, why, if you got a billion and I got, 2,000, like, you're doing way better than me. So why do you need to tell me you got 10 billion? Why do you have to tell me you have 6 billion? What is this? What is it that's so invested? And where I do disagree with you, I think the old Kanye was a real person. I just think the new Kanye and the old Kanye, the only thing that's changed is who the target is. Like, the same person that said George Bush don't care about black people is the same person that said slavery was a choice. They're both like Molotov cocktails to be thrown into a social media environment to get people to respond. And I actually like to say, I think Kanye's kind of part of the Erykah Badu school of self-promotion. Like, this idea, she said a long time ago, as long as you're talking about me, that's what matters. Doesn't matter what you're saying. The fact that I'm part of the dialogue, part of the conversation is my only goal. And so I think that's another kind of leadership that we should be at least inquisitive about, if not concerned about.
Yeah, and this is exactly why when we had our last guest, Flex Matthews, or maybe it wasn't Flex, but somewhere the guest said, and I agreed, that motivation is nonsense. I don't think we should be motivated. You can be driven, but motivation is fleeting. Motivation comes and goes. So if you're motivated by Kanye West, I think that's your problem right there. You need to be driven by whatever it is that, is in your life that drives you, whether it's, your belief system, whether it's your family, whatever it is. But being motivated, I think, doesn't do anything. I'm sorry. There's just, the background on our show, that couch looks like slices of bread, and it keeps like distracting me. I keep saying that, like, it looks like white bread. But at any rate, I think Kanye West, again, I think he.
But Jay, real quick, it's not really about. It's like, what is it about these kind of cults of personality that are so infectious right now, that people just want to follow people who just say anything, and for some reason, whatever it is they said is received by the people that follow them as genius.
Yeah, so I think there are people who have large followings who are not geniuses. I think Kanye West has some level of genius. People are going to be, some people are going to be upset. You don't have to like all geniuses. There are geniuses who are bad people. And I don't know whether I would go as far as to say Kanye is a bad person. I think Kanye is not someone who we should use as an example for really anything. Not how to run your life, not how to, be married. Not, I don't think there's a whole lot of example there to follow. I think Kanye, like Trump, like you said, in terms of that kind of leadership, is that they are so insecure that their following, is really important to them. You know what I mean? They're so insecure, and Kanye's so insecure that he's trying to literally talk himself into thinking that what people think about him doesn't matter to him, if that makes any sense. So he's always saying, like, I'm not going to be bullied. I'm not going to follow the crowd. But he's at the same time putting things out there to get some sort of response from the crowd. And usually he wants to hear those people who are like, it's okay, Kanye, you're a genius. You're so great. And I think that's what he lives for. Um, and it's really sad because, it's probably cost him his marriage. You know, it's cost him a lot of relationships that he could still have today. And I think all he has really left is his money. And so he inflates that to be more than what it is. And, if there's one example to me that says to people, like, money isn't everything, and that, being rich isn't going to solve your problems, is Kanye West. I don't think there's any one of us who would trade places with Kanye West right now. At least I wouldn't. I'm happy enough. No, I'm straight. I'm good. Yeah.
I would trade. I would just still need to be myself. But we got a guest here. So I want to welcome Tim Weedon, the executive director of kNOw. What's going on, Tim?
Hey, good to see you. Good to see everyone. Mazi, Dr. Nick.
Sorry, we've been trying to have that conversation for 3 weeks, so I appreciate you letting us have that conversation. So Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about kNOw? Tell us about your journey as a leader and how this is kind of where you got to.
Okay, great. So, wow, this is an interesting. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity as well. So, kNOw, we're a nonprofit organization, and we deal with technology, STEAM, as they call it: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. How we got started actually was, and when we talk about leadership, we talk a lot about leadership, is how a group of students came to me at the time when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club and said they wanted to do something alternative. A lot of them weren't playing basketball or playing football. So we're looking, just trying to find alternative ways of how to, get them engaged and get them connected. And one of the things that they were really into was just kind of being on the computers, looking at social media. And so with that said, we just try to figure out, like, how could we kind of create an engaging program and kind of work with them to kind of develop those skills. So we had an opportunity to take a kind of like a coding class that we had an opportunity to take. We had a grant to be able to take that class. I had started off with about 20 young people who were interested in kind of, doing something different, alternative to what the normal day kind of activities they had going on at the time. And so we took a coding class, and within the 2 weeks of the coding class, I had about 2 students who remained in that coding class, and who were only reason why they stayed in that coding class was because of you, Mr. Tim. That's the only reason why I'm staying in there. But there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect between the teacher, and there was also a disconnect between the required prerequisites that are required in taking this coding class. So that was something as a failure. So a lot of times, as a leader, you fail. There may be 20 times that you fail and you get back up and kind of figure it out. So we chalked it up. It was a failure, but at the same time, it opened new opportunities and doors. For example, where I decided myself, I wanted to actually take coding classes, take coding classes at night, do a small little sabbatical. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of continue and doing boot camps and so forth. So I wanted to learn it myself. So the next time we met, I would be able to kind of have more of an engagement, involvement in that process of what this coding class would look like. Get students settled and engaged with the prerequisites that were required, like pre-work that we had to do before we got to the coding class. So a year later, we had about 50 kids join the program, and we were able to not only continue with the coding program, but we were able to go to different locations. So, for example, we went to American University, we went to Catholic University, and we went to George Mason University as well. So the students had an opportunity to meet other coders and people a little bit older than them who were either from the community or had some connection. So, specifically the Black and Brown community, and, learning about technology. So they had opportunities that kind of connect and see that there was a whole new world, and that there were other people that looked like them who were interested in coding and wanted to do wanted to work with computers or computer science. So that was kind of my journey as a leader, and kind of stepping out. And it was a big step. I'm not going to lie to you, it was a lot of trial and error, constant trial and error, and stepping out and trying to get kNOw started, especially in the early stages. So I think that's the pivotal moment after you hit year 1 or year 2. Are you able to continue? Do you have the stamina to continue? Are you that leader, um, or do you have that passion for it to be able to continue? And so that's pretty much where we are at the moment. We're hitting year 3 actually. And so with that, again, I think the biggest takeaway when you talk a little bit about leadership is really trial and error. um, is the big takeaway. And so that's something, thinking about leadership is really being able to kind of fail, but also pick yourself up and, first of all, be able to shift what changes you need to take place. What do you need to do over again? And then go from there instead of like, oh, I failed and that's it. So
So in your journey as a leader, just generally, how do you gauge success?
I think, wow, that's interesting. I think success comes with outcomes. So if you have specific outcomes, a lot of times I use this kind of format called SMART goals, and I look at those specific goals that I wanted to achieve or reach, and I look at those. If I was able to hit 3 of those, I would be ecstatic and saying that was a success. But really looking at outcomes, I've learned through the years. I've learned that's very important, and setting things forward is having that forward vision and looking at specific outcomes that you want to achieve.
And so how does that relate to tech turnup? Like, what are the outcomes that you look for to gauge success with tech turnup, and where to make changes, and where, like you talked about, trial and error and making changes,
Mhm.
within tech turnup, what are some of the mistakes that you've made, and how have you kind of corrected those?
Right. So I would go back to the example at the time when I was working at another organization. Just assumptions. You assume that okay, here we were able to pay for this coding class, so you should be able to take it and pass these. Pass it and receive a certification. Um, Although you're downstairs and you're working on a computer doesn't mean anything at all. And so I think not having more of a hands-on perspective on and involvement with the young people, and as far as even being in the classroom with them, and seeing, my from my perspective as well as an adult, seeing what they're going through and what are the prerequisites, that and what are requirements, and then even if the teacher, and make sure that the teacher's engaged and has an understanding of the students. I think that was a big learning curve for us, and how even to this day there's still, a lot of people can't see themselves in these fields, in these science, technology, engineering. They don't see themselves. And so that's a challenge too. And you have people that may not even look like them or have the investment in them and don't see the potential in them. And so I thought that was a huge disappointment, not only for myself, but also for the students as well, who were so, I mean, this was a new experience. So you can imagine what young people go through when they, trying something new, the excitement, that first day of school, of high school or middle school, you excited, you there with your boys, you first day of class, yeah, now I'm in high school. And then that disappointment comes, um, during the first day. So I think that was definitely a struggle that we had. And then, yeah, that was, I would say, a failure aspect of it that we had. And then to pivot again, as you mentioned, how I pivoted was I just decided to take coding classes myself, learn HTML, JavaScript, jQuery, as much as I could, at least the basics of it. So I knew what I was talking about when I was having conversations with bringing on new facilitators or teachers, or that, hey, I might have to teach this first prerequisite of the course before we even get into the course. And so that was a learning experience for me.
So Precious wanted to know, what languages are you coding in?
Uh, right now, I focus with young people is HTML and which is just a basic build out of websites. But have changed so much where we're times sites are built with jQuery. You use different blocks of noise as well.
And where do you think this gap, this technology gap? Because one of the things, I talked to a elected official by the name of Ro Connor, he represents Silicon Valley in California, and he was saying that, you know um, construction and manufacturing together won't have as many jobs in the future as technology will, and that we need to get Black and brown people into technology. Why do you think that that gap exists? Why do you think that there are small numbers of Black and brown people in the tech field when it seems like Black people are really interested in tech? Like when I look at it on the surface, when you look at social media and social media innovation, whether it's Clubhouse, whatever, Black people are on it. So why is it that you think that we are not at the forefront of tech fields?
There's two tiers to that. So I'd say the first part is there. I'm gonna have to correct it. There's a large amount of African Americans, Latinos, Latinx, who are actually coders, who actually have backgrounds engineering and coding. The problem is that they're not being hired at the same rate of their counterparts, and so a lot of them defer from there and say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna go into humanities instead, or I'll go in a whole different area instead. But there's a large population of people who are out there coding or working within the or have interest in working within the field. But then again, there's a lot of checks and balances when you look at, for example, organizations like Twitter or Google, and you look at the considering the amount of people that they hire, and then the small percentage of people who Black and brown and Latinos who are hired in those organizations. That's number one. And so a lot of them are deferred and decide to go into other areas. And then the other aspect of it is within the communities, a lot of times, for most part, we just really don't see ourselves there. And so there's not a lot of people who may be in certain communities who are actually working with technology and understand it to a level where where they have that interest in coding and so forth. And then they're not understanding, again, like it took me a while to understand that there were prerequisites. So even when I took the coding class, I probably was the oldest. I probably could have been, to be honest, I could have probably been the grandfather to a few people in the class, but I didn't know there were various prerequisites that you had to have beforehand. And so I think there's just a lot of barriers, in that area. I think that we are more than resilient and capable to be so successful as we even hit now with Web 3.0. The opportunities with the fusion of arts that are involved in that as well, with the NFTs and so forth. I just don't think we see ourselves there. That's the other aspect of it. We, as young people, we don't see ourselves in those fields. Even in science, we don't see ourselves in those fields.
And so I also wanted to know, because I am interested in this topic, and at the University of Maryland, we actually had a whole event about this. And like I said, we invited people from the Brookings Institute, and from and actually Ro Khanna was there. And my question is, like, how do we fix this? How do we get more people hired? And what would you tell if you were able to talk to Joe Biden, or someone like that? What would you tell them about the kind of support that organizations like yours need?
Right. That's a good question. I would say, number one, we need to have leaders from the community to lead. That's number one. And so they need to have all the resources, access to capital, whatever is necessary. They need to have that in order to lead and look at different pathways of how to get more people involved, in the field. And then secondly, I feel that, and we're headed in the right direction. So there's a lot of VC venture capitalist organizations that are Black owned. We're beginning to specifically go out and search for specifically go out and search for organizations that are from the community, Latinx as well, that have these VC organizations that go out and specifically focus on African American owned and run organizations. I think those are the two specific things that are very important. And I'd say, again, when we talk about Joe Biden, it's just allowing us to lead. I have no other way of explaining it. Allowing us to lead, provide the necessary resources in order to lead.
Mozzie, do you have a question, or are you frozen? Oh, there he is. Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Tim, what made you decide to focus on young people as
Okay, you broke up there, but I think we got the gist of the question. What made you focus on young people rather than, you know, maybe adults or other people in the community that want to switch, you know, careers and get into the STEAM field? What made you decide to go and lead young people?
Mm-hmm. I think again, you know, I'm fixated on the topic of leadership. I think it was passion. Me growing up without a father in the household, you know, you name it, and working with a lot of young people who may even had fathers in the household, but really weren't, you know, providing them with the necessary skill sets or were in need of additional support. So let me rephrase that as well. So a lot of fathers who were in need of additional support of, and kind of, you know, it takes a community to raise a village. So really just trying to, you know, support the young people any way I can. And that's where it starts. I think it starts with the young people, and then as they become adults, they're ready and prepared to take on anything, to take on the world. I just think that you know, they're sponges. They kind of take a lot of information and are able to kind of, you know, utilize that as they become adults. And I think that was, you know, again, passion, and trying to be that secondary or third uncle, father figure that, you know, that they may have needed in their life, or additional just additional support that they may have needed in their lives.
No, I think you make a great point. Part of the reason why I ask is just because when you think about disconnected adults, we spend a lot of time and resources trying to engage disconnected youth,
Mm-hmm.
but there really isn't a lot of effort to engage disconnected adults. It feels like as a society, we kind of
Mm-hmm.
say, like, if you didn't get it in those first 12 years of education or go on to trade school or nursing school
Mm-hmm.
or college, you on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder whether or not you have as part of your vision, not necessarily tomorrow or this year or even this decade, but like at some point to say that there could be value in this same effort that you're making with young people being made with adults. Like I'm familiar with, there's another organization, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're called Bite Back. And they
Yes.
do technology, particularly for elders. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not coding. It's like access to email and just getting on the World Wide Web, which seems like, you know, I'm chuckling while I say it, but especially during COVID, when the only way you could get an appointment was going on a website or having access to the internet, lots of people weren't able to get, lots of elders weren't able to get access to resources because they couldn't get past particular technological barriers. And like I said, I'm not trying to change your mission.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder whether or not at some point you could see value in engaging with adults who need those same kinds of support that you're providing for young people.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up, Mozzie. I definitely feel that you know, a lot of times, even when, you know, during COVID, we were online, and I had a lot of parents engaging as well, kind of, you know, watching, and, you know, coming in and out of the room to kind of engage in the process as well. So that's definitely something, you know, I've you know, that's I've thought about. And then how would that be, you know, how could that work as well in connection with young people? And so one of the things I've been, you know, contemplating, or just kind of, you know, thought a lot about is like how either the young person could connect the adult. So the young person could provide their family member with the necessary skills around technology, and probably even help a neighbor or a family member. So maybe my process is a little bit different, but really kind of honing in on the young people, because again, they are, you know, sponging all this information, know a lot about social media. I've actually done a project with Empowered Young Women, in which we took high school students and worked with the Latino population of businesses. And so we tried to figure out their social media analysis. And so it was I don't want to say killing two birds with one stone, but it was the concept of they got the knowledge around social media as far as the small businesses, and then at the same time, our students were able to, um, you know, work with the small business and kind of have like a mini internship in a way, and in which they learned a lot, and they learned a lot about the Latino community that they didn't understand, and so. One of the things which they brought up is like, why not have it, in the language, and so that may be more effective and reaching the community that they want to reach. And I know they definitely took that in consideration when they were trying to figure out different ways of connecting with social media and their audience.
I think it's a great point. And the truth is that it might not be a matter of you need to do something different. Maybe it's for those parents or the kids that are in your program, identifying opportunities for them to engage in tech with organizations that already work with adults. Whether that's a class at a community college or whether that is an online course. But just this idea of, I asked the question, I work with young people as well. But I think sometimes we work with young people for a few reasons. One, because we all were brainwashed by Whitney Houston to believe that children are the future. Two, because the funding community says invest in young people because that is the future workforce, the future voters, the future people to be involved in X, Y, and Z. But it's very rare that organizations say, what about right now? What about the people who are in those roles right now who who have their own kind of side hustle business, who could use technology to grow their audience, who could be using social media to grow a network of people who could be invested in their work, as opposed to like, we're going to plant these seeds, water them, and then let the world give it sunshine and hopefully it grows into a strong tree, versus, like there's this whole science of taking care of sick trees or just trees that don't get very much sun or very much water that could also be of value, because those trees, unlike those seeds, can give us oxygen right now versus oxygen in the future. But I appreciate your answer. Just it's not even pushback. It's just
No,
I'm challenging you the same way I'm challenging myself to think about an older demographic.
Right. And so what comes to mind for me, I don't know if you're familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, but I'm thinking about 10,000 hours. And so if someone is in their 30s or 40s, I mean, it's not to say that it's not possible, but I think a lot about the 10,000 hours. What are the requirements to continue to learn and grow and grow and grow? And so those are the things that I have specifically in mind. However, yes, you bring up a very valid point. We need to look at ways, because it's really a reinvestment, because again, all these skills will not be available. And I, the conversation last week I had with my kids, to be honest, I haven't been to McDonald's in probably like 10 years. So the students were telling me that you go to there's like a kiosk kind of thing, and you go there and you place their order, so you're not even interacting with anyone. So I just thought that was where we're headed with that, as far as like the service field, where we're headed with that. Are you then repairing the machine as well? Like what then becomes your role? And I see it a lot at Whole Foods, or you go to Giant or Safeway. You have the self-checkout. Who's there? Oh, it's not working. Okay, let me cut it off and cut it back on. Like, these type of things are definitely technology related. And so maybe if I look at it in another thought process as far as a reinvestment, because a lot of these, especially in the service area, it's going to be tough. They won't be around for long.
Well, I want to let you know the McRib is back.
Okay.
I'm kidding. It's a great point, but and so this to me is this kind of question about the role of vision and leadership. So maybe talk to us about your vision. You talked about kind of the impetus for what started Tech Turnup and what motivated you through an experience of what you're the first person that we've had on to talk about leadership that talked about a failure, and so I really appreciate that. what you see as the ultimate vision for not just young people getting exposed to STEM, but really like your role as a leader, even if it's a local leader, in this effort, or is your goal to be a national or international leader through the work of this organization?
Um, that's a good question. I consider myself an international leader because a lot of my work. Here's a side note that probably hadn't been discussed. The majority of my career was in Sweden, so I lived about 15 years in Sweden, and I'm very familiar with their educational system. Finland as well, which probably has the number one educational system. So I consider my work international as far as like my experience and again, getting my master's at the University of Manchester in England, which is a different perspective of how we learn and how we, how the what's the learning process look like. And so I think at the end of the day, again, globally in the perspective of the work that we do, but really local and really just trying to reinvent like how we learn. I think learning should be fun. And so 2 days a teacher came in the room and the kids were laughing and was wondering what was going on, but it was excitement because one kid had an idea for an app, and so we started kind of developing, kind of building out this idea. So what is the goal of education? Is it to for test, or is it to create people who can kind of fill job positions or become the future leaders and so forth? So I see ourselves again global as far as from a teaching or learning perspective, but local, and trying to implement this process within various schools or have our own standalone building, in a sense, like an Apple building, where you come in just really disrupting the whole process of education.
And that sounds really exciting to me for you as your friend, that you're thinking about space, that you're thinking about expanded reach, you're thinking about how to be a resource in a particular geography in terms of a building, but also thinking about how to be a resource within a school experience, disrupting the traditional school day by giving young people access to technology, which is so interesting because in most schools, one of the first things they do when a child comes in is take away their technology, take away
Yes.
their ask them to unplug from the internet.
Mhm.
You want to jump in, Jay?
Yeah, so I do want to push back on one thing for both of you, and that is I was reading this book. Oh, it's not here. About the dangers of screen time for young people, and that it can be damaging, even things that we consider to be positive when they're staring at screens for long periods of time. It actually can interrupt with a lot of really important things. Number one, sleep, and it can interrupt also with even their learning ability and their reading ability. I guess my question to Tim would be, what would be your response to people that are concerned about those sorts of things?
Hold up, Tim. Hold up. Hold up. Are you trying to accuse Tim of being a social media dealer? You said he's trying to get people hooked on Instagram. Is that what you said?
Nah, that's
Okay.
That is not what I'm
nah.
saying. That's not what
You
I'm
know
saying.
what? I you know what? I'm feeling real comfortable now. I appreciate this. I like that. I like that. I agree with you. How about that? What if I agree with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always agree with me.
Right. And here's my rebuttal. So
Okay.
what we do is we add in an element of yoga. So as a part of our lessons, especially during our boot camp summer programs, which are really intense, every day we start with yoga. And so the kids, we don't turn on the computer. We start with yoga. We get prepared to use technology. And then as well as once we're done, they put away the computers, they have an opportunity to go out, for example, to go outdoors, and there's other activities. But we definitely within our framework, we have yoga, and that's very important. I think that we have yoga. We also had um, you know, behavioral specialists, social emotional behavior organization come in and consult and talk about feelings, and that required there was no computers around that. So I mean, I think that at the end of the day, I agree. I 100% agree with you. I'm not a person like only technology, but I think we have to, and this is what I learned, living in Europe, and you have to educate a kid holistically. That you can't just, it can't be just in parts. So, for example, this is, not to go off track. This was a day. This was a every day. Kids came in and had skateboard. There was a skateboard high school. There was a technology high school. I ran the music management or music business department. And then you had an Ericsson. And I'm dating myself. I don't know if you guys were ever familiar with Ericsson, a Swedish company. So what they had a mobile school. So these were high school students going in. You're engaged. And then they had other areas that they had the math, they had the science. All this was involved in the process. And they had other activities too, like outdoor yoga, different stuff like that. But the goal was to engage students holistically, but at the same time, how we're engaging them is this kind of really how they were engaging them was focusing on their interest. So we had a whole school, like there was a whole ramp, like Tony Hawk style ramp in the school. And then if you weren't in that class, you still could take that class as another class as well. So if you were in the music class, you could bounce around and take other classes as well. But it's just, I mean, that's just so interesting of how they allowed them to kind of, not only go with their passion, but at the same time, if they realize that they were good at it, they can continue it, or speak to their counselor and what, I think I'm better in this area. And so even at that age, they were kind of getting more understanding of who they are. And
So,
yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I thought that was great. That's really interesting. I wanted to ask also, in terms of, this is something Mozzie I always said that I found intriguing about Words Beats in Life, is that he's like, we're not looking for competitors, we're looking for peers. How would you feel if someone took your model and implemented it somewhere else, or tried to make it nationwide? Would you be frustrated by that, or would you applaud that?
If you probably asked me 10, 15 years ago, I would have been frustrated. I applaud that because the fact that knowing that it works, that there are people out there who believe in it, to copy it, to remake it, whatever it requires, that it works. And there's room. There's room for everybody. There's room. There's room for growth. I think that the more that there's an emphasis in that area, the more attention that can be created for you, but also your competitor, so-called competitor.
You know what's funny is I 100% agree with what Tim just said. I also will be honest and say that is a public declaration of how I would feel. Because a personal declaration of how I would feel is like, this man just stole from me.
Right. Behind the scenes. Yeah. Behind the scenes.
Like I've literally, because I've been doing this work for 20 years, there've been people who've come up who've literally done exactly what I'm doing, who live in the same city. And it's like, bro, you could have come and said, let's partner. Let's be co-opetition instead of competitor. So that's but honestly, recognizing that's my ego. Because my public declaration is my truest self, like how I want to feel. Like there's enough work for everybody. We can't do everything. It's okay if people, like, we were all inspired by the same things to do kind of similar work. But I just want to acknowledge publicly that it's okay to have some ego wrapped up in the fact that, like, why did someone take my idea? So let's take a step back though, because one of the things that you brought up that was kind of like in the last question was kind of a throwaway point that I think is really exciting, which is this idea that learning can be fun and so can work. The idea that you can be, like, skateboarding is a profession now. BMX riding is a profession now. Building apps for people is a profession. Right? Like we've seen hip hop arts as professions that some people got to participate in, but a lot of people didn't. So one of the things I said on a previous show, like, I don't understand why all of these mayors in big cities that have issues with dirt bike crews riding through the city, why can't they actually designate a park where those young and not so young people who ride dirt bikes can go and get trained about how to race and actually join the dirt bike racing community as a profession, not just recreation. And it's interesting because like we do a lot of things as a community recreationally that other people get paid a lot of money to do professionally.
Right. Exactly. Oh, I wanted to bring up anyone familiar with Gary Vee?
Yeah, Gary Vee, definitely.
Right. So and so that's where I got the idea, like there's room for everyone. And so, and try to, push my ego back for the idea of like, dang, he just took, hold up. I actually had a conversation with him about it. I didn't think he was going to run with it. So let me hold back on my information. But at the same time, more and more as I emerge in the tech world, is that a lot of times people do provide information to kind of get the word out there about, hey, this is what we're working with. But at the same time, for me, I have to activate. So it's not for me to sit around and say a couple words and then not activate. I have to activate, and it needs to be in place.
Let me tell you something from experience. When people take your ideas and advance them, they have actually done you a favor. They have actually done you a favor because you thought that what you had was perfect, exactly as it is. And someone took your perfection and put some icing on it to make it a little bit sweeter. You're like, oh, I didn't even think about putting icing on. And I'm saying this because like there's a brother that both Jason and I know by the name of Drew Ryan, Dr. Andrew Ryan. And when we first created the journal, the Words, Beats, and Life Journal of Hip Hop, after the first volume, Drew, who also lived in DC at the time, created the Journal of Hip Hop. It was beautiful. It was full color. It was like we were still like taking our thing to a place to get saddle stitched on regular paper. And he's like, nah, bro, I see what y'all doing. Respect. I'm gonna take it to another level, which then made us take it to another level. So like if your work is good enough to inspire people to steal it and make it better, thank God for those people, because they're for all intents and purposes, they're your research and development team that you're about to do. You can witness now what they're doing. Be like, oh, that's what you're doing? Okay, so now we're going to build a peer review board that's national. Oh, you're the Journal of Hip Hop? We'll be the global Journal of Hip Hop and start to focus on hip hop. So it's like that McDonald's Burger King example. Granted, McDonald's is a juggernaut and Burger King is kind of bootleg, but like the idea that there's more than one option can be motivation, can be inspiration. And so I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid of people stealing your ideas, because in the best case scenario, they steal your idea and make it better, which then inspires you to be like, I never thought about that. But if I was going to do it, here's how I would do it even more differently. Anyway.
In the words of a great hip hop artist, I like the Whopper, F the Big Mac. But nah, that, I hear what y'all are saying, and I think that's a good way of looking at it. Is you can use your so-called competition as an opportunity to grow, and sometimes you need, Muhammad Ali needed Joe Frazier at one point. That was what pushed him to a new level. If everybody's easy, if you're just walking through guys, you don't get, you'll never reach greatness. It's always good to get that push. And I'm wondering what is it that drives you to do the work that you do? And I know that's kind of a rebrand of a question we already asked you, but I do want to know, like, what is it? Because I'm sure it's rewarding, but it's not something that's going to make you that yay 10 billion. You know what I'm saying? So, what is it that will keep you doing this for the next 10 years? Are you going to be doing it for the next 10 years? And is it something that'll be driving you?
Right. I hope so. I think what drives me is to be honest, just it's the simple things. So I work with a student. English is not so great. And just to see that he is real, like never talked at all. And so we had a presentation a few days ago, and students got up to talk. And so he decided he wanted to try and speak and talk about his ideas. And so it's just those little things that he sees himself like involved in the process, and that he can do the work. Number one, that he can do the work as well as it just, and because he enjoyed it so much, and he, muddling through words, but he was that motivated, that encouraged. Like, look, I'm gonna get up here, I'm gonna try the best I can to speak English, and talk about my ideas. Talk about this is what I'm doing in design thinking. This is what I was thinking about. This is the problem I would like to solve. And it's just those small little things. And where I had another student from Southeast, this was a virtual class we had, and I think the other students were more, uptown. And so he kept saying, I'm not going to talk, Mr. Tim, because the way I talk, I have this heavy Southeast accent, and no one's going to understand, and they don't, I don't want to have to deal with that. And so he always kept himself off camera, but behind the scenes, this boy was a beast. He would be doing extra work, coming back, buying fonts, buying different fonts to create different stuff. I was like, get out of here. And, and I said, look, you're gonna have to show them your work. You're gonna have to present. And so finally, I convinced him. We had a little side conversation, after the class was over, that he was gonna present. The whole class was in awe, like just shocked, like, damn, huh? The dude who never shows himself on camera or said a word. And then he was just like going through, okay, here's my analysis. I took the number of likes versus and he was going, doing just really, breaking it down. All the kids were like, hey, can I borrow your paper to take notes? And I said, yeah, you have. And he, at that point, he realized that, dang, I have the skill set. I have this skill set, number one. And number two, I shouldn't be afraid because I have this heavy Southeast accent. And so it's just those little things, to be honest with you. It's those little things like that just continue to keep me motivated, and just see. And I like to see him, a couple years from now. Another example, I'm walking in the Apple store. I see one of my students. Oh, I'm working here now. I'm like, what? And so, I was like, yeah, if you need any repairs on your computer or anything, just let me know. And I'm like, dang, am I getting that old? Number one, am I getting that old? But to see her working at Apple store just kind of threw me off. I was like, dang, so this did resonate in some way, somehow, so just stuff like that. Just those things are worth millions for me, millions of dollars for me, just those moments, and that they still remember you or continue to have that relationship with you regardless of whatever else is going on in their lives.
Hey Tim, because you've got your library behind you, I wonder what books or films have influenced your ideas of leadership.
All right, so I'm probably gonna mess this one up. Anyone familiar with Pablo Ferraro?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it? What's the title?
Was that Pedagogy?
Pedagogy. Yep. So that's my number one reference. So I start there, and the reason why one of the things that resonates, and that my professor said, this is a very American way of thinking. Memorizing information or banking information instead of really learning it through the process. So when you're talking about it, you have another level of engagement and connection with it. So everything I try to do is I try to create a level of engagement and connection with the information instead of regurgitating it or memorizing it. And so back to the technology class. So one of the things, our kids love music. I'm not a musician. I don't know anything about music. I said, but I start to use, okay, you start with the chorus, and the chorus may be a line of code. And then you start with the verse and then the chorus. And then the chorus is smaller than the verse because it's the way it's set up with the code. And I just started there. I don't know anything about music. I just said, start with you call it the verse and the chorus. Don't forget. So I wanted them to basically repeat the algorithm, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And so that resonated with them. And so they were able to kind of like, oh, now I get it. And so they were able to, understand, the language, it had another meaning or connection. So that's one of them. And then definitely Malcolm Gladwell is one of the authors. And then a couple other coding books. I even have books, for example, Coding for Dummies, however you want to look at it. It's a great beginning reference resource that really starts with the basics and so forth. So
we talked a little bit earlier about, I asked about serving older folks, but I wonder, how does the age of a person impact the way you think about them as a leader? Meaning, if you meet a young person that's a leader, could you follow a young person that was a leader? Or is a young person as a leader only a leader for young people? And the same with older leaders, does that mean they're only leaders for older people? Like, how does age impact the way you think about who is a leader and a leader of who?
Gotcha. I'm gonna have to give out a shout out to who's Los Carlos on this, because we've had numerous conversations about this. I don't think age is, to be honest, I don't feel age is relevant. It depends on the knowledge base of what what is required or what is there. I think we all are, in a nutshell, can be leaders or are leaders. But I don't think age is a specific requirement. I think a lot of times we just kind of throw that out there. Okay, I'm older, but are you seasoned enough to? Are you seasoned? That's one thing that may come. Are you seasoned, or do you have the expertise or the knowledge in a specific area? So I don't think young people or the leaders are only for young people. I think adults could be led by young people in specific areas or aspects, or on a whole. So I kind of that's an interesting point. I've had heavy conversations about that, especially someone who's in their 20s, 25 and 30. Could I be led by them? And that all depends on what is required, because we have the concept of situational leadership, and so that's based on that particular time and moment, what's necessary. So I think it all depends on that particular time and moment, what's necessary to be a leader.
Did you want to ask one last question as we wrap up, or are you good?
No, you got it.
All right. So I guess Tim, as we get ready to leave, do you want to share how people can follow, support, get involved with the work that you're doing at Tech Turnip?
Okay, appreciate that. So you can contact us at techturnip.com is our website. Mazia, I will be talking with you shortly. We are planning to have kind of like our first kind of gala, if you want to call it that, December the 2nd. And we want to kind of put some information up about that on our website. So you can go to techturnip.com, as well as you can, social media handles, we're, hashtag techturnip.com, at techturnip.com. So that's pretty much our different handles that we have.
Dope. Tim, thanks so much for the work that you're doing and for being transparent about your journey, the leadership that you are currently exercising, and how you see yourself being a leader into the future.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother. Take it easy.
All right, Jay, that's another one in the books.
Yes, indeed. That was great. I really enjoyed it. And he's a really thoughtful guest. Although all of our guests have been incredible people, and I would call them leaders, but I guess that's up for our audience to decide.
And for those people to decide for themselves. Tim talked about himself being a global leader, so it is what it is.
And if people want to copy your content, I think that it could be a sign of leadership. You are actually leading others in your field.
I think that's a great point. I look forward to having our continued conversation. Jason, thanks for joining us once again. All right, that's episode 12 with Brother Tim Weedon from Tech Turnip. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to follow, like, and subscribe to the YouTube channel that hopefully you're watching this on. And look forward to seeing you next Sunday. All right, y'all. It has definitely been a pleasure.
Peace and Life, Fifth Element Live. The elements of hip-hop are DJing, graffiti, breaking, knowledge, and...
Yo mama.
Biddy, did you come here to play or did you come here to finesse?
We can't all get a pair of socks?
I told you, Patrick, I was coming for you. I took you out.
You're still whack, copy?